A lot of this will not make any kind of sense to you, but it will by the end of this video, I promise. What's going on, guys? Pegasus and the Wise Guys. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Make sure you sub, make sure you hit the bell, guys. There are so many cards to talk about in this new format that I kind of have to break it down like this, because going through each card one by one and doing all the slide screens and all that is cute, but you need to see the nitty gritty. You need to see what's up with this format. And we got to start off talking about this new hand trap that came out in Power of the Elements, Kirikara Divincarnate. This card is really insane. I think it was called a movable avatar before. This card is a reverse dark ruler, and I wanted to start with this card because it is a fairy monster that cannot be normal summoned or set. Therefore, if you were a Drytron player, this is an addition that I feel like you absolutely have to at least play one of at minimum. I'm maining it right now. I'm in love with the card. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. Going over the card, it says by attributing all face-up monsters on the field that activated their effects this turn in your opponent's monster zone, it can special summon itself and must be special summoned that way, and it gains 1500 attack for each monster attributed in that fashion. And during the end phase, you can target a monster in your opponent's graveyard and special summon it to your field. Now, obviously, it's not specific to Drytron, but it definitely can be searched by Ben 10, but that's clearly why this is here. What I also wanted to mention is that in decks that also have stuff like Layer of Darkness in it, I'm thinking about the Labyrinth stuff that's going to drop, the Infernoid deck that I have always loved. I just have to love, I fall in love with cards that say tribute, basically. Hell, low-key I want to play Rika almost. You know, it's very powerful, the tributing mechanic of the game, because most of the time they can't do anything about it. That's why cards like Monster at one. Moving on, I wanted to talk about Epsilon, and I wanted to talk about deck dev and how the hell do you deal with deck dev. Deck dev is a very powerful card that is directly meant to hit Splight. However, going to be a lot of decks, like let's say Fluanderies, are going to be devastated by a card like this. And obviously, if you're playing a deck like Fluanderies, you have the ability to activate a card like Featherstorm against people, and that's where cards like Epsilon inside of your side deck may be absolutely necessary, because let's face it, having a blank field, which happens an awful lot, and being able to activate card to maybe want to stop your opponent, I definitely feel like it's a real thing to play a card like Epsilon. However, there's going to be a little bit of a caveat and a little bit of a skill base and this is just my opinion. Most of the time, people are aware of the side frame cards. Therefore, they're going to wait until you summon a card, right? And then hit you with it. Then hit you with the deck dev, right? Then hit you with the Featherstorm. So in my opinion, they can easily play around a card like Sci-Frame Gear, Gamma, or Epsilon, right? Just because you have the awareness that, oh, they're playing Gamma, okay, I'm not going to do that again. Oh, they're playing Epsilon, okay, I'm not going to do that again. That's what I mean. So in this specific scenario, I feel like Sci-Frame Gear, Epsilon may fall a little bit short for you. However, if they do want to wait for you to do stuff, that's why I wanted to mention a card like Lightning Storm, because that would essentially force out the trap card in the first place. And essentially any other board breaks like that, like evenly would probably turn out bad for you, but anything like Harpy's Feather Duster, anything like that that can force out your opponent. Additionally, I wanted to mention Crossout as well, because Crossout can also deal with cards like Deck Devastation Virus that you just may not have the ability to play a card like Epsilon, let's say Fluanderies. Crossout isn't a very good card in my opinion. However, it suddenly is going to become more and more relevant as we go on. It's because of cards like Dark Ruler. It's because of cards like Droplet, where you're going to be dealing with these because a lot of the hand traps have been bumped. Therefore, there's not that many proper responses for cards like Dark Ruler, for cards like Droplet, for cards like Deck Dev, for cards like Featherstorm, Lancia. I could go on and on and on. So Crossout is like the perfect card, right? Just in case you don't have Crossouts, looking for something short term to deal with these two, I wanted to mention Blizzard. Blizzard obviously target a face-up spell your opponent controls and negate its effects, and all with that name. So basically it's stuck with them. Now Droplet, you're going to hand them back unless they pitch a spell. You're going to hand it back to them, but just in case they don't, you get to bounce a Dark Ruler. I feel like that's relatively decent. All in all, guys, all of these texts that I've talked about so far, like the lava golem is essentially being replaced by the ultimate slayer, which I'll get to in a second. All of these guys are just what I feel like is going to be inside of the meta game. Additionally, I wanted to start to talk about ultimate slayer and mass change. These two Tyralements, Rhino Heart, as well as Shaylin. She's called Shirin, Shaylin. I've seen her called so many things. The two level 4s essentially, but she can represent all of the rest of them because they're all dark. You can activate and play cards like Masked Hero Acid and Masked Hero Darklaw because you have monsters and their fusion summons that can tie directly into the archetype that is Tyralements, and you can have a mass change to turn into one of them, which is very, very powerful. Clearly, a lot of people already know about this. I'm kind of beating a dead horse. People already are kind of ready for this. There are variants where people have tried. I don't necessarily think it's the most powerful thing, but it does out Dark Ruler and Droplet, which is another reason I wanted to have these there. If you have this set, and you can turn any dark monster that you have, essentially, not all of the Tyralement stuff can be turned into a Darklaw or an Acid, but sometimes just the ability to have a Harpy's Feather Duster like that or a Darklaw to be able to play around cards like this, it's nice in my opinion. I don't know if that's necessarily the most broken thing, but it's definitely nice. Is it a force multiplier? That's up to you. Ultimate Slayer is one of the craziest cards like I've ever read. This is the feature of the video to me. Ultimate Slayer is an extremely powerful card. I mentioned in a video the other day. It literally outs Sword Soul by itself. Here's what I mean. Essentially, guys, if you have, let's say, Baron sitting next to, let's say, a Shishao, I guess that would be the best one to go with, just to, you know, sometimes this card can be irritating to deal with. I'm thinking about Shishao because that's what they end on a lot, right? And I end on that card a lot when I play the deck as well. Essentially, this card can out that because, well, you get to shuffle back the Baron. You cannot respond to it. And then let's say you're playing a deck like Drytron and you're sending a Herald of the Arclight to be able to essentially play through a target with a card like Seravis, the Ancient and Ascended one. You basically have an entire out to that Sword Soul board that I just mentioned, because then they can't target you with Shishao, can they? You see how that's what I mean by how nuts this card is. I could talk about this card for 20 minutes by itself. Literally pick this card up. It's literally in the same category as Talents and Droplet and all the rest of those cards. Pot of Prosperity is another example. Pot of Extravagance is another example where people didn't pay it too much attention and then wham, it was $200. This is one of those cards. That's my opinion. Yes, it loses to a card like Anti-Spell, and then you're gonna probably want the Lava Golem instead if you consistently lose to the Anti-Spell, which can very, very much be a real thing. But Ultimate Slayer is a very powerful card. It's very powerful for cards like Fluanderies. They can send cards like Omen to be able to basically Rhoda if you have a card that's already banished. If you've never seen that interaction, you've never seen the Dogmatica version of Fluanderies, and it's understandable because Shifter's so powerful you probably never have. And essentially, I just wanted to mention all those because those are just absolutely necessary. I also feel like there's something to figure out with Zoo and a lot of different stuff going second. I feel like this with Zoo and the pressure that they can already put on you going second to going into Zoo's turbo like this and this and this, I think that's pretty good. That might be a rogue deck for a regional that could sweep a regional. That's one of those decks where somebody just gets Zeus to death. I could see that coming. Last but not least, in rounding up on these, I have to talk about these last links down here. Track Black is the first card I wanted to talk about. One of the silliest cards I think I've ever read. It says you can target one monster you control. This card points to semicolon, that's your cost. Each time it destroys an opponent's monster by battle this turn, you can draw one card. So it can be Ghost Ogred, and then it makes all of this irrelevant. However, each time it destroys an opponent's monster by battle. That is insane, guys, because each time it destroys an opponent's monster by battle. Each time it destroys an opponent's monster by battle. Each time it destroys an opponent's monster by battle. If it can attack everybody, cards like this, I saw it in Dino originally. With cards like this, we all remember Purgatrio and the absolute power that's inside of that. And additionally, guys, you clearly have to mention some of the other cards like Draconids being able to attack everybody as well. If you summon it properly, make sure that it's specifically off of the Drytrons. I just feel like that is absolutely insane, guys. Absolutely insane, because you could essentially refill your hand. Is that win more? Probably. It depends. I feel like the reason I wanted to play it, and again why I'm mentioning Dark Ruler and Droplet, is because Dark Ruler, Droplet, your opponent, you can maybe start to fight through your opponent. They had to use a negate, so they just have big ass monsters sitting on the field, and then you can punch over them multiple times with cards like this to just be able to plus your hand. I feel like that's something that you may want to consider. That is very, very powerful, guys. Just my opinion. I feel like it's not win more because of a powerful card like Ruler being in the format, because so many hand traps aren't relevant. Many are, many aren't. A card I have been playing for a while, when I've been testing with some of my friends, and I've been playtesting Splight. I've been playtesting a side-frame version, and I wanted to mention Lambda because I feel like it could just be in the regular version, because I feel like the regular version is in need of a little something. I've consistently noticed that toes broken rather easily, not the most easy, but I do see sometimes in the Terraliment matchup it just gets walked through, and even when you play the showed in Terraliments, it's not all that phenomenal either. So a basic link like that can go under the Splight mechanic, like the gigantic Splight or something like that, whatever they changed it to, Lambda would be the perfect card that you may want to consider. And with a card like Epsilon in your deck as well, you know, it's up to you. You also can use cards like Delta, and I could go on and on and on. There's a profile coming on that, we promise. The other extra deck monsters, this is a new card that's basically like the new Underclock Taker, Pit Knight Early. It came out relatively recently. I believe it's only a TCG card. It says it right here. You can target one effect monster your opponent controls, and until the end of this turn, change its attack to 0. Also negate its effects. Sometimes when you're pushing through an opponent's board, a card like this can be absolutely crucial, especially when it has an end phase effect that says if this card is in the graveyard because it was destroyed by battle or card effect and sent there this turn, you can special summon it back, basically giving you link fodder for the follow-up. Just in case it didn't quite save you, it's still going to be there for like a follow-up. I've noticed hits and stuff like that where I've linked it off, and then I've ended on a Masquerena, and then I put it back on the field because I actually used it earlier in the turn, and it died in battle because I was attacking over something, and I hit them with a droplet, they hit me with a droplet. It was something weird like that came up. That's gonna come up all the time. That second effect only comes up in weird situations like that, but I still feel like that's really strong. Castell is the last extra deck card I wanted to talk about, and because it is a winged beast. I hope that hits you hard enough. It's a winged beast. Therefore, in a deck like this, having 2 level 4s, that's very interesting. Anywho, guys, I could talk about much more. Obviously, there's much more to talk about. This is the dumbest thing to me as a Drytron player, to just basically have a power card like this, although anti-spell really sucks. And lose 1 turn is probably a new floodgate that people are going to be playing, so look out for that. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. I know the long video, but these are many cards that needed to be talked about. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Pegasus out. Arrivederci. Ciao!